Some secrets are too big to stay hidden forever. Bekky has finally seen Bright's true face, not the gateman she insulted, but a man with power, wealth, and enemies who will stop at nothing to destroy him. Now, the fight is no longer at the gate. It's everywhere. Welcome to the final part of The Billionaire Gateman, Part 3. The war has begun. Bekky refused. You can't just order me out of my own house. Bright's voice was low but urgent. If you stay, you won't live to see the weekend. Just then, Lola barged in, tears in her eyes. Bekky, I just saw Patrick with another woman, and they were talking about your property. Becky's world tilted. No, that's not possible. Bright handed her the note. Believe me now. Her hands trembled. So he's working with these people? Bright nodded. And they're moving fast. Outside, a car screeched to a halt, and armed men jumped out, running toward the gate. Bright locked the gates just in time, but the men began ramming them with a metal rod. He grabbed Becky's wrist. If you trust me at all, follow my lead. They fled through the back, weaving through alleys until they reached a small safe house. Inside, Bright made a call. We're in location B. Prepare the extraction. Bekky sat, panting. Why are you helping me? You don't even like me. Bright's gaze was steady. I never hated you. I just hated the way you treated people. There was a pause. Then he said, If you want to survive this, you'll have to pretend to be my fiancé for the next 48 hours. Bekky blinked. You're... What? Bright explained. They won't touch someone they think I've claimed as mine, but we need to make it convincing. Becky's mind spun. Why? Who exactly are you that they would be scared? Bright just said, someone they shouldn't have messed with. Over the next day, they stayed in hiding. Bright cooked for her, patched her arm when she scraped it, and even smiled once or twice, a genuine smile she hadn't seen before. For the first time, Bekky saw him as more than a gateman. That night, she woke to find Bright gone, and voices outside saying, We found them. Bright burst back into the safe house, grabbed Becky's hand, and pulled her out through a rear exit just as the door crashed in. They jumped into a waiting SUV and sped off. Bekky was too shaken to speak. When they finally stopped, Bright handed her a phone. Check the news. Her jaw dropped. The headline read, Bright Oba, billionaire heir, disappears from public eye. Rumors of undercover mission swirl. Underneath was a photo of him in a tuxedo at a gala. She turned to him slowly. You're Bright Oba? He nodded. And now you know why I became your gateman. Becky's voice trembled. Why me? Bright's eyes locked on hers. Because your company was being targeted by the same cartel that killed my father. The room went silent. Bright continued, Chief Duro wants your land. It's sitting on an untapped oil reserve. He'll kill for it. Becky's breath quickened. So all this time, you were protecting me? Before Bright could answer, the door burst open. Chief Duro himself walked in, flanked by armed men. End of the road, Bright, Duro said with a smile. Bright stepped in front of Bekky, his pistol raised. You're not taking her, he said. Duro chuckled. Still playing the hero? This woman treated you like dirt. Bright's jaw tightened. That's between her and me. You are my business. A tense standoff followed until sirens wailed in the distance. Duro's men retreated, but not before he hissed, This isn't over. Bekky turned to Bright. I don't deserve your help after the way I treated you. Bright's eyes softened slightly. Maybe, but you still needed saving. He leaned closer. Now the choice is yours. Stay safe under my protection, or go back to your mansion and face them alone. Bekky didn't hesitate. I'll stay with you. Over the next week, with Bright's network dismantling Duro's cartel, Bekky saw the real man beneath the disguise, strong, strategic, fiercely loyal. One evening, as they watched the sunset from his private estate, she whispered, I'm sorry for everything. Bright studied her for a long moment. "I'm not your gateman anymore." She smiled faintly. "Then what are you?" He stepped closer. "The man who might just love you, if you're ready for it." Before she could answer, his phone rang. Bright's expression changed instantly. "We have a problem. They're back." Bright's voice went cold. He dropped the phone into his palm like someone handing him a live coal. "How many?" he asked. "2 SUVs, 10 men. They're circling the estate again, boss. Duro's testing us." The voice on the other end, Maya, his operations chief, was steady, but small fear threaded it. Bekky watched him from the sofa, bandages still fresh at the edge of her hairline. The look she gave him now was different from the many times she'd looked down on him. It carried something close to fear, almost like regret. Bright rose. He moved with that quiet efficiency that had become familiar in the weeks since she'd discovered who he was. "We mobilize now," he said. "Minister is on his way. Call the team. Anita, lock down every camera feed and get any guests out of the house. Bekky, stay inside. Don't go near the windows." She should have snapped back at him. Instead, she nodded, and for the first time in a long while, there was a softness in her eyes that made Bright's chest ache. Outside the compound, headlights pulsed like the heartbeat of a city that refused to sleep. The black SUVs eased toward the gate, and the men inside them moved with the casual menace of people who had believed a life of getting what they wanted would never end. Bright's men were already in position. There was Maya, her hair tied tight, the minister's security detail in suits that didn't fit their bodies but fit their purpose. Bright checked the feed on his tablet. The SUVs idling, 2 figures stepping out, one tall and broad, another slinking at his side. Chief Duro's gait was unmistakable. He moved like the world had learned to clear a lane for him. Bright swallowed. He had expected Duro. He had not expected him to be this brazen. The first SUV rolled to the gate. Duro's voice carried across the property like a dare. "Bright Oba," he called. "Come out and take what's left of your courage, or do you hide behind your girl?" It was crude. He meant for Bekky to hear. He wanted to wound. Bright didn't answer. He stepped forward to the gate just enough for Duro to catch sight of him through the bars. Maya gave him a small, imperceptible nod, the signal Bright had taught her for years. It meant now. On cue, the gate exploded inward, not with the brute force Duro had hoped for, but with a dozen men in black moving like shadowed ghosts. They were Bright's team, not the cartel's. Duro's men were confused for a breath, a fatal hesitation. The first clash was messy and loud. Gunfire snapped through the night, but Bright's network was controlled, precise, stunned rounds and targeted takedowns. Tayo, the known muscle who had tried to climb Bekky's balcony weeks before, was the first to go down. He was cuffed before he could run. Duro lunged for his pistol. Bright moved like a man who had rehearsed this exact moment in 100 sleepless nights. He stepped between Duro and his aim, not to take the shot himself, but to buy time until the minister's security could move in. "You should have stopped this when you had the chance," Bright said, close enough that Duro could smell him. "You could have left with your life. Instead, you chose to terrorize people." Duro spat. "You think you own this city? You think you can buy silence?" Bright's jaw tightened. "No." He raised his voice so the men could hear. "I didn't buy anything. I fought for it. You took things that didn't belong to you. People, land, lives. Tonight ends it." The police, legitimate, uniformed, called earlier by the minister and routed quietly to a side street, moved in then. With evidence already trickling onto the minister's tablet, transaction histories, phone recordings of Conley and Patrick, Tayo's earlier confession to a low-level fixer, the arrest was procedural but devastating. Duro tried to resist. He threw one last curse at Bekky as handcuffs closed over his wrists, but the words were thin. When the dust settled and the sirens faded, the compound felt like a place that had finally exhaled. Bekky walked outside, barefoot on the warm driveway, and stood where she had first watched Bright as a gateman. He watched her come to him, not servile but real, humbled, chastened, and thankful. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked at last, voice small. Bright was tired in a way that had nothing to do with broken doors and cuffed men. He sat on the low wall by the fountain. "Because I wanted to be sure I could protect you first. Because I needed to know you could stand when the truth came. Because my father, he taught me the only way to really take down people like Duro was from the inside." Bekky sat beside him, close enough that their shoulders brushed. "Your father, I remember someone in the papers. I never knew. He was taken when I was a teenager," Bright said. "Men like Duro and men who used men like Kunle to do their bidding took more than a life. They took a chance at justice. I swore I'd see that no one else lost everything to them." Bekky turned to look at him, really seeing him. Not the gateman she had dismissed, not the billionaire from old magazine covers, but the man who had stood in the gate and risked everything for people he barely knew. Tears gathered, not of pain, but of regret and gratitude. "I treated you like garbage," she whispered. "I was cruel." "You weren't born cruel," Bright answered. "You were cushioned by things that made you blind. The important thing is, you can still change." She laughed unexpectedly, a wet, honest sound. "Is that a lecture? From my gateman-turned-hero?" He nudged her. "You'll get a lot of those now that I'm in a suit more than a uniform." They sat in companionable silence until the minister approached, flanked by reporters now told to wait until arrests were formalized. He spoke quietly, his hand on Bright's shoulder. "We'll handle the press. For now, get some rest. You saved a life, and likely many more." A week later, the city papers were ablaze with the story. Billionaire heir behind disruption of cartel, Chief Duro arrested, powerful network exposed. Kunle and Patrick were named in follow-up exposés. Patrick's embezzlements and Kunle's collusion were public. Becky's company, under new scrutiny, weathered the storm, partly because she agreed to stronger compliance, and partly because Bright's evidence made the corrupt players vanish. The legal steps were ugly and necessary: depositions, testimony, footage shown in courtrooms. There were threats that life had not fully dismantled, but with Duro in custody, they were whispers, not roars. One quiet afternoon, with the trial months away and the worst of the danger eased, Bright invited Bekky back to the place where she had once issued him orders like they were laws. They stood in the driveway, where the fountain made lazy circles and the sky was the clear kind of blue that promises small mercies. "Do you remember that day you told me not to touch your cars?" Bekky said, and Bright chuckled. "How could I forget?" he said. Bekky reached into her bag and pulled out something small and surprisingly tender, a plain silver band. She held it between two fingers like it might break. "You said there were things you couldn't buy that mattered," she said. "I want to give you something I can actually give. Not your money, not your title. My life, if you'll have it." Bright's throat tightened. This was no showy proposal, no camera-ready spectacle. It was messy and human and exactly what he wanted. He took the ring, but instead of slipping it on her finger, he slipped it into his shirt pocket. "Bekky," he said softly, "I don't want to take your life. I want to share it. Let's not rush to a wedding because headlines need it. Let's build one that's ours." She smiled, and for a second he saw that woman who'd once ordered him off the driveway, but softer now, not less herself. "Build with me then," she said. "Help me be better." They walked slowly toward the gate, hand in hand, passing the spot where so much had shifted. The city around them was still hungry with its own dramas, but inside the small world they'd made for themselves, equal parts safety and risk, forgiveness and challenge, there was a peace that felt like a promise. Bright stopped at the gate and looked at her. "There are still cases to finish, people to make right, but I promise you this: wherever we choose to stand in the world, you will always be seen, and you will never stand alone." Bekky leaned her head on his shoulder. "I'm ready," she said. They walked back into the house together, the sun warm on their faces, the gates closing behind them, not as a barrier, but as a memory-turned lesson. Love, slow, stubborn, and honest, had become the real security. The mansion's gates have closed on the past, the arrogance, the danger, the pride. But new doors have opened, doors to respect, forgiveness, and love. Bekky and Bright's story reminds us that the people we underestimate may hold the key to our greatest protection and our greatest joy. Power and wealth are not measured by the gates you own, but by the people you honor. Bekky learned that pride without kindness is weakness, and Bright proved that true strength lies not in revenge, but in protecting those who once hurt you. Life has a way of turning the tables. Today's gateman could be tomorrow's savior. Treat every person with respect, because character is the only wealth that cannot be stolen. Thanks you so much, lovelies, for following up till the end of this amazing story. If you want more heartfelt stories like this, all you have to do is to hit the subscribe button now for more. See you soon.